And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with the final video in my DC Rebirth section, DC Licensed Worlds. As you'll be aware, I've broken the DC universe into 7 bullet points and we've run through them one at a time. We started off with Young Animal, then we did Deceased, Black Label, Out of Continuity Comics in 2 videos, the Wildstorm universe, and now we're doing the Licensed World section, again in 2 videos. Last time we did all the different licensed comics that were co-published with Archie Comics, Boom, Dark Horse, DC Looney Tunes, Dynamite and IDW. And today, with no further ado, we're going to dive straight into all the ones that were linked to Hanna-Barbera. So with no further ado, what we need to talk about is Hanna-Barbera Beyond. This was a comic book initiative and a line, comic book like publishing line, that was started in 2016 by DC, and it consisted of comic books based on various characters from Hanna-Barbera, the classic animation studio. So the imprint was launched in 2016 because Dan Didio and Jim Lee developed a partnership between Hanna-Barbera and DC because both of them were owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, and they decided to remake all the animated studio's like comedic characters and adapt them into a darker and edgier and grittier sort of setting. So if you watched the last video I did where I mentioned DC Looney Tunes, it's a similar thing where DC Looney Tunes were reimagined through this gritty, darker, more mature lens. That's what they were doing with Hanna-Barbera. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run through it in roughly the alphabetical order, and I'm going to talk through all the different series that come with the Hanna-Barbera-verse. Some of them were great, some of them were terrible, all of them are interesting. So with no further ado, jumping in, Dastardly and Muttley. This is a series that was from 2017 to 2018. It's a cartoon spin-off from the Wacky Races cartoon. There was a Dastardly and Muttley cartoon as well, with that theme tune, Chase the Pigeon or Catch the Pigeon. So this comic focuses on the efforts of Dick Dastardly and the sidekick, the dog Muttley, to catch this pigeon, which is a carrier pigeon carrying secret messages. The 6-issue miniseries is written by Garth Ennis, so this is one for the Garth Ennis fans, with art from Elaine Morissette. Next up, what I think I need to talk about actually is a series called DC Meets Hanna-Barbera, which is a lot like what we talked about last time when we talked about the series DC Meets Looney Tunes. It's just a bunch of random one-shots, and each one-shot is like a crossover issue, and then it has a backup story, and it was collected in a couple of trades. But there's quite a lot of them here. Whereas DC Looney Tunes is only 10 issues, there's a few more of them here, and there's a bit more to talk about. So I'm going to go through them one at a time. The first one is for this volume collection, this trade paperback, which is DC Meets Hanna-Barbera Volume 1. It contains the following issues. I'll go through them one at a time. It's worth going into it in some detail, I think. The first issue is Booster Gold Flintstones. This came out, obviously, 2017. This was written by Mark Russell, therefore amazing, with art from Rick Leonardi. It also has a backup story about the Jetsons, written by Palmiotti and Connor, with art from Pierre Britowith. And that backup story is collected in the Jetsons, which we're going to talk about in a moment. For all the backup stories, if they're collected elsewhere, we'll talk about the bits where it's collected elsewhere when we get to those series. So just bear with me. It is complicated, but I'm just going to run through it. The second issue I want to talk about in Volume 1 here is Suicide Squad Banana Splits. Again, came out in 2017, written by Tony Bedard, had art from Ben Caldwell, and it has a backup story of Snagglepuss, which is written by Mark Russell, and we'll talk about that in a second when we talk about the Snagglepuss series. The next single issue is Adam Strange Future Quest. So this was written by Mark Andreyko and Jeff Parker. Traditionally, or rather technically, this is an epilogue to a series we previously talked about, which is the Death of Hawkman. So if you remember, in the series, or the videos that I did about Out of Continuity comics here, I talk about the Death of Hawkman and how it's basically out of continuity. Well, right at the end of it, Adam Strange gets teleported somewhere, and basically this is where he ends up. So it's kind of a sequel to that. This is also set somewhere between Future Quest and the second series of Future Quest, which is Future Quest Presents, which again we'll talk about in a second. This issue also has a backup story, which is Batman Meets Top Cat, written by Dan Didio, and that ends saying to be continued in Top Cat, but actually what it means is to be continued in the issue Superman Top Cat, which we'll talk about in a moment. I know it's confusing, but just bear with me. Issue 4 in this volume is Green Lantern Space Ghost, written by James Tynion and Chris Sabela. It has a Rough and Ready backup story, which says to be continued in the Rough and Ready trade, which we'll talk about in a second. And that is the 4 issues that are all in Volume 1 DC Meets Hanna-Barbera. They all came out in 2017. In 2018, we got another set of one-shots. So the first one is The Flash and Speed Buggy, written by Scott Lobdell, amazing art from Brett Booth, no backup story. The second one is Super Sons Meet Dynomutt and the Blue Falcon, written by Peter Tomasi. It's worth noting this is also collected in all 3 Super Sons omnibuses, which we're going to get to when we talk about the Superman family, pre-Brian Bendis, in the DC Rebirth core guide that we'll be talking about over the next few weeks. Again, no backup story. The third issue is Black Lightning and Hong Kong Phooey. This was written by Brian Edward Hill and has a Funky Phantom backup story. That's the name of the character, Funky Phantom, written by Jeff Parker. I don't think that's collected anywhere else. And then finally, we've got the story Aquaman Jabberjaw, which is written by Dan Abnett with art from Paul Pelletier. And that has a Captain Caveman backup story written by Jeff Parker. I don't think that backup story is collected anywhere else either. But all of these 4 issues are collected in Volume 2 of DC Meets Hanna-Barbera. Finally then, later in 2018, another 4 issues were released. I don't know if these were actually physically collected anywhere. I genuinely don't know. So if anyone does know, let me know. I found some solicits for it, but I couldn't actually find the physical trade anywhere. And when I looked on stuff like Google and eBay and stuff, I couldn't see pictures of the physical trade anywhere. So I don't know if it's a real thing. But anyway, the 4 issues that were released after Volume 2 and potentially are orphaned are as follows. We've got Deathstroke Yogi Bear, written by Frank Thierry. The interesting thing about this is this has a Secret Squirrel backup story written by J.M. DeMatteis, and this is part 1 of 4 of the Secret Squirrel backup stories. We'll get to this more in a couple of seconds. The second issue was Green Lantern Huckleberry Hound, written by Mark Russell. Really interesting story. And this has the backup story, which is Secret Squirrel part 2 of 4. The third issue is Nightwing and Magilla Gorilla, who I'd never heard of, written by Heath Corson. And again, this has Secret Squirrel backup story part 3 of 4. And then the final issue is Superman Top Cat, which we mentioned a couple of moments ago when we talked about the Top Cat backup story in a different issue. And this entire issue is written by Dan Didio, and it references that backup story that had Superman and Top Cat, or rather Batman and Top Cat in it, from Adam Strange and Future Quest. And again, this single issue has a Secret Squirrel backup story, part 4 of 4. So in terms of the Secret Squirrel backup stories, this is, as I say, there's 4 sections, and they all kind of unite into one combined story, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 of 4. And they're set after the Secret Squirrel series that we're about to talk about later on. Just keep that in mind. So, those are the 12 issues for DC Meets Hanna-Barbera. I know it's confusing. It's because each of them is backup issues. Each of those backup issues or backup stories are collected elsewhere. It's all a bit of a mess. And similarly, I don't know whether or not the third collection actually exists. So, unfortunately, this bit, whilst very messy, hopefully kind of clarified that a bit. Any questions, ping me in the comments down below. Moving back into slightly more coherent stuff, let's look at the series Exit Stage Left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles. Came out in 2018, written by the amazing Mark Russell with art from Mike Feehan. This is a sobering, very adult story discussing allegorical McCarthyism. If you don't know what that means, you should probably read a bit more. But my point is it reimagines the Hanna-Barbera cartoon character Snagglepuss as a gay playwright in the 1950s being victimized under McCarthyism. Now, the comic itself makes regular references to real-life events and historical figures, so it includes subplots about things like the quote-unquote blacklisting of Dorothy Parker and Lillian Hellman, Marilyn Monroe's affair with Arthur Miller, the execution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, and the testing of the first hydrogen bomb. The series won a GLAAD Media Award for Outstanding Comic Book for its LGBT representation, and is really, really interesting and really, really good. Issues 2 to 5 include a backup story called The Sasquatch Detective, written by Brandy Stillwell. I'd never heard of this character before. Is this a Hanna-Barbera thing? I don't know. Either way, it was really good. Really well written, with a main protagonist that, frankly, I could have read a lot more of. So is there more of the Sasquatch detective stuff? Does anyone know? If you do, hit me up, because I would love to know more about this character. The trade also contains that bonus Snagglepuss story that I just mentioned like a few minutes ago from the Suicide Squad Banana Splits one-shot special. So this is where all those little backups and all those little DC meets one-shots are starting to come into play. Next up, we have the Flintstones. This came out from 2016 to 2017. Written by Mark Russell. This is amazing. This is one of those series that I was reading it, and this doesn't often happen, but sometimes you read a comic and you're like, did DC know that they're publishing this? Like, this is so good, but also such a incisive, intelligent, politically charged comic. It's like, does anyone in the editorial know this? Has anyone like actually signed this off, or are they just not aware that they're publishing this? Because it was just astonishingly different to everything else coming out. It takes the concept of the Flintstones, which obviously is in this romanticized Stone Age setting, and it follows the lives of the characters we know, Fred and Wilma Flintstone, and their dinosaur Dino, and Baby Puss, you know, the saber-tooth kitten they have. It's also got their baby Pebbles, it's got their neighbours, Barney and Betty Rubble, and also Bam Bam. So it's got all the Flintstone stuff, but because it's written by Mark Russell with art from Steve Pugh, it's incredibly thoughtful, mature, politically charged, insightful. It's got humour, it's got politics, it's got social commentary, it got loads of positive critical acclaim. It got nominated for 2 Eisner Awards. I think it was Best Limited Series and Best like comedy or something, as well as a Harvey Award for Book of the Year. I don't know if it won them. It should have won all of them. It's fucking brilliant. It's available in 2 trade paperbacks. One contains issues 1 to 6, and volume 2 contains issues 7 to 12. Neither of the trades include that Booster Gold Flintstones one-shot that I mentioned earlier as DC meets Hanna-Barbera, but if you get the deluxe oversized hardcover, it does collect that Booster Gold tie-in right at the end. Moving on to something substantially more disappointing, Future Quest. So this came out in 2016 to 2017, and basically it reimagines Space Ghost, Johnny Quest, the Herculoids, and all that sort of stuff in a new collection. And basically it starts off in Florida, but then Johnny Quest and his brother gets pulled into this struggle between space rangers and this bad guy and blah blah blah. It's written by Jeff Parker. I'm not going to talk much about it because I found this functionally unreadable. This sounds like an exaggeration, but it literally gave me a headache while simultaneously sending me to sleep. This was like the worst of reading Young Animal, but even worse. I quit after 3 issues. If you were a fan of Young Animal, or if you were a fan of Future Quest, or if you're a fan of other series that I cannot stand, like Clarion from the New 52, which also almost killed me to read, then you may love this. But I hated this. I didn't even hate it, actually. That's not fair. I didn't even read it. I don't know enough about it, and I don't read enough of it to have an opinion. It's collected in 2 trades. You've got Volume 1, contains the first 6 issues. Volume 2 contains issues 7 to 12. It was then followed up by a sequel, which is Future Quest Presents 2017 to 18. This apparently follows the adventures of Space Ghost as they team up with the Herculoids to rebuild the Space Force. I think it's set after the original Future Quest series, again written by Jeff Parker. I did not even attempt to read this because I couldn't handle the first one, to be honest. In terms of this, don't forget that the Adam Strange Future Quest one-shot that we were talking about is set somewhere between Future Quest, the first series we talked about, and now this one, which is Future Quest Presents. The naming is a bit confusing. It's very easy to get the single issues mixed up, but just remember, one is called Future Quest, one is called Future Quest Presents. If you do read it and like it, let me know. Let me know what I missed, because maybe I'll just take a very strong shot of coffee, fortify my loins, gird myself, and try to read it again. But right now, I just do not have the emotional stamina to do that. This was released in 2 trade paperbacks. The first one is Volume 1, containing issues 1 to 3 and then 5 to 7, so it does not contain issue 4. And then Volume 2 contains issues 4 and then 8 to 12. I don't know why, because I haven't read it. On to the next series, we have Jetsons. This came out in 2018, and this is like the sci-fi analogue for the Flintstones. So whereas the Flintstones live in a world which is a comical version of the Stone Age, with machines powered by like dinosaurs and things like that, the Jetsons live in like a comical version of the Space Age, with all these crazy robot contraptions. So the trade collection just contains the 6-issue miniseries and the bonus story from Booster Gold Flintstones, which was the sort of bonus content story it's a short thing, but that's the prologue to this trade paperback, and the whole thing is written by Jimmy Palmiotti. Next up, we've got the Rough and Ready show. This came out from 2017 to 2018. This is, I guess, a reboot of the original 3-year run, which is from, I think, 1957, which followed the character Rough and Ready. Rough is the cat, Ready is the dog. This reboot is a 6-issue miniseries written by Howard Chaykin, very middling. Next up is a really interesting one, Scooby-Doo, or more accurately, Scooby Apocalypse, which sounds awesome. So this was from 2016 to 2019, so the heart of the DC Rebirth publication era, and Scooby Apocalypse essentially reimagines the characters from the Scooby-Doo franchise, particularly from the 1969 animated series Scooby-Doo Where Are You, which is the iconic, really famous one. And it reboots it, reimagines it, and resets it into a post-apocalyptic universe. In this case, the gang and their mystery machine are the centre of a well-meaning experiment gone wrong, and they need to use all their mystery-solving skills to bear, along with, like, a Scooby Snacks, I guess, to find a cure for a world full of mutated creatures infected by a nanite virus that enhances their fears, terrors, and basically makes them into, like, weird zombie monsters. This entire series was written by J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen, with a range of different artists. It's relatively straightforward in terms of its collections. There are 6 collections. Volume 1 contains issues 1 to 6. Volume 2, 7 to 12. Volume 3, 13 to 18. Volume 4, 18 to 24. Volume 5, 25 to 30. And Volume 6, 31 to 36. So 6 volumes, each containing 6 issues, very straightforward. If you're reading it in singles, what I will point out is that issues 18 to 29 all feature a backup story about a character called Secret Squirrel. If you've been paying attention, you'll remember that when I was talking about DC meets Hanna-Barbera early in the video, there were 4 uncollected issues from 2018. Each of those contained a backup story about Secret Squirrel. Those backup stories are all set after the backup stories here in issues 18 to 29 of Scooby Apocalypse. Complicated, I know. I was tempted to do like a reading map with like pictorial interpretations of how to read this, but I couldn't be bothered because it's only licensed world stuff, and you know I want to focus my energy on hardcore DC stuff. But I do acknowledge this is all quite complicated. Issues 30 to 36 of Scooby Apocalypse also contain backup stories, but that's another series of backup stories about a character called Atom Ant. So just FYI, that's there. And finally, the series Wacky Raceland, which is fucking great and highly recommended. This is the Hanna-Barbera-verse reboot in 2016 to 17 of the 1968 to 1969 series. That sort of comic or cartoon series featured 11 different cars racing against each other in various rallies throughout North America, with all the drivers hoping to win the title of the world's wackiest racer. This trade contains the full 6-issue miniseries. It's dark, it's gritty, it's adult, it's clever. It's written by Ken Pontac with art from Leonardo Manco. Highly recommended. Alright, that takes us through the 100 plus issues. That is purely the Hanna-Barbera tie-ins for the DC licensed world universe during the DC Rebirth era. The one pro tip I would like to offer you is not to get confused by this trade paperback. This is the Flintstones Jetstones crossover trade paperback. It was published in 2017, right in the middle of DC Rebirth, but actually all it's doing is reprinting issues that originally came out in 1996. Don't get fooled. Don't do what I did and spend ages tracking it down and then get massively disappointed. It's not part of the DC Rebirth era, even though the collection was created or compiled in 2017. The comics themselves, ignore them entirely. Okay, there we are. Right. Oh, that was a bit of a slog. So that was Hanna-Barbera-verse, all the Hanna-Barbera issues. Have you read these? What did you think about these? Do you find it confusing when you think about how many of them had backup issues and which backup issues get recollected here, there and everywhere? Have I missed any? Have I got any of the trade collections wrong? Specifically, am I wrong that the 3rd volume of the DC meets Hanna-Barbera one-shots isn't collected? Is there anything else I should know? Any comments you want to make that maybe I'll pin to share the knowledge with the wider community? As always, please comment, please like, please support the channel by picking up my novel No Gods or Kings for less than $1. And yeah, the next video in this DC DC Rebirth series, which I can't promise is the next video on the channel, but it'll be relatively soon, is going to be now diving into the core DC Rebirth continuity. Thanks for coming along with the ride. I hope you find the reading guide and reading map on the approach that I'm taking useful. And as always, everyone, until next time, stay classy.